Good afternoon, Berlin. It's nice to see. Hi. It's nice to see so many of you here. I liked the talk before. Who liked the talk? It's like Saunders' hack one. I really liked it. We use all these static analysis tools, and then there's a whole language that takes care of it. It's great. I'm going to talk to you about the other end of the spectrum, though. I'm going to talk to you about the process, about async and non-blocking code reviews. But first, a little bit about scribes. Scribes are the people that copied over the Torah, the holy scripture of the Jewish people, for hundreds of years now. And they do that according to very specific rules. They take one of about 60 to 80 sheets of parchment, and that sheet of parchment is specifically scraped, cured, tained, prepared according to the rules in the Torah. They take that sheet of parchment, a feather quill, the original Torah, and they start copying over the 304,805 characters that the Torah has. Also according to very specific calligraphic rules. And when they are done with that sheet of parchment, which takes them about a week, they hand it over to a new scribe. That new scribe takes it and the original Torah and starts counting all the letters, and the words, the sentences, the paragraphs. They start comparing the center letter, and the center word, and the center sentence, and the center paragraph. And when there are more than 3 errors, that sheet of parchment will never become part of a new Torah. A week of work scrapped. You can't just throw that away, by the way. There's holy words on there. So what you do is you put it in a clay jar, you put that clay jar into a cave, and you seal the cave. This is where we found the Dead Sea Scrolls. So what we based all our scriptures on is basically erroneous documents, hundreds of years old. I mean, imagine making that 4th mistake. There's no backspace on the feather quill. There's no scribbling it out and going like, oh no, by the way, I meant this. No, that's it. 1 week of work done. We go through some hardship, we think, when it comes to looking at each other's work and then having to go back on our errors. But this is like the real deal, right? All right. I'm Frank Koornstra. I work in this amazing team at Usabilla. We create voice of customer solutions. And that means that we provide a tool so that our customers know what their customers think of them. We gather feedback through channels like mobile apps, through, of course, websites, and also through email. Sorry. And to create that software, we also do a lot of code reviews, which got me interested in, like, why is this sometimes so hard? Like, how can we do this better? And I want to talk to you about that. But first, let me ask you a question. Who here uses code reviews to merge their code into the main branch more than 1/3 of the time? I'm expecting more hands here. Come on. More than 2/3 of the time? Few still. Almost always. Good on you. Good on you. I hope to convince you to do a little bit more, maybe, and also how to diminish the efforts so it makes it a little bit easier. First, I'm going to talk about those efforts and rewards, and then how to apply some tricks to that to make it easier for yourself. And finally, how to apply that in a consistent manner so that you don't just walk out this room and go, there was this dude at this conference and he said some smart things about this, hopefully. And but what was it again? No, let's apply it consistently. But first, let's talk a little bit about rewards and efforts. This balance must be pretty good because we're still doing code reviews, right? And you hear so much about the reward side. It improves quality, whatever you think of quality, less defects, more maintainability, better readability, better understandability, all the abilities that you can think of, it would improve. And also quality in terms of communications, be that on the technological spectrum. These are the patterns, the code patterns that we want to see. These are the code patterns that we don't want to see. This is the libraries we use for serialization, key value storage, all that kind of stuff. Be that on the domain end of it. These are the concepts that we use, and this is how they interact. Is that communication in the team or between teams? But it would improve all of it. And if you look at it like that, better quality, better communication. It's like this perfect picture. Like this perfect picture of the pyramids of Giza. Look at these people here in the front, right? They traveled on camels through the desert, probably for days, and now, almost without water, they reached the pyramids of Giza. Sure, that could be the case, or you don't have the complete picture, and that is what I want to give you. I want to give the other side of the picture. I want to swivel the camera slightly so that you can have that complete picture, so that we also talk a little bit about the efforts involved in code reviews. Whoever did code reviews knows one thing. They take time. Considerable amount of time. I would say that was my intuition when I did some research for this talk. But how much? It's sometimes hard to say. Luckily, we're programmers, and we have this amazing company that has all our code and has an amazing API. So I went into the GitHub API, looked at a few of our PRs, a few of our projects, and crunched the numbers on time. Okay, two things to keep in mind here. First of all, correlation is not causation. If one thing goes up, the other thing goes up. Might be that one causes the other causes the one, or that there's even a third factor involved, causing both of them to go up. And second, this is not statistically significant. In no way is this statistically significant, hopefully also not for our company. Statistically not significant, correlation is not causation, but this is what you see for a few of the projects in Usabilla. On the vertical axis, you see the amount of time it takes on median to close a PR. Categorized on the horizontal axis by the amount of root comments. And a root comment to me is the comment that starts off this conversation. Every reply to that comment is not a root comment. And what you see here is quite an upwards trend. If you get into the 30 to 40 amount of root comments, it might take you 400 up to 700 hours for even one of our projects on median to close that PR. Lots of time, right? Yes, of course. Stuff on this end of the spectrum, probably bad code, and bad code also has lots of comments and takes lots of time to fix, but like you can see the trend. And if you now divide this number by the amount of root comments, you have the median time to close one of those root comments. And here you can see as well as if you go over the 10 root comments, it's pretty reasonable to expect that it takes about 10 hours to close one of those root comments to really fix it, right? The only thing I want to say here is they take time. And sometimes we treat them as though they're free. Could you fix this one line here? There's a new line there. I'm missing a new line here. Or one too many. I don't like array map. I want to have a for each, right? It's not going to take you 10 hours to fix one of those, but some of these things could be a little bit easier. All right, you know what? But at least the quality goes up, right? That's what we hope. Yes. If you keep your PRs pretty small. You see, Atlassian did some nice research on this. You see here the amount of time someone looks at a file versus the amount of files in that PR. If you get to 30 to 40 files, it takes only 2 minutes to scan one file. That is a lot of lines scanned per minute. What you see over on the left end is the law of triviality, bike shedding, as we sometimes know it, or as Cardinal Richelieu said it, give me 10 lines of the most honest man alive, and I will find something in it to hang him. It is not that disastrous, luckily for us, but we've all been in that PR. There's only 4 lines changed, and still someone somehow had to find something, right? All right, you know what? We're just going to add more reviewers, because more reviewers look at different problems, look at different files. It's going to be better. Except that it's not. More reviewers, make sure that you spend less time per reviewer. Actually, gets worse. The amount of defects found also gets down. That is not the amount of defects found per reviewer. This is the total amount of defects found with all those reviewers. What you see here is the effect where if there's a crash, and you have lots of bystanders, you have the less chance of actually a bystander helping you. Bystander effect. Everyone's responsibility is no one's responsibility. Time's one factor. Cognitive load is another. At Usability, we use rebasing. So you have one commit introducing your interface, 3 commits having the implementations. It's all fine and dandy, comes to the review. Someone doesn't like the method name or the interface name for that first commit. You have a little bit of discussion. Finally, okay, fine, we'll change it. Changing it in the interface, not that big of a deal. But now, for the subsequent 3 commits, first of all, change it. Don't introduce new static analysis issues. Don't introduce new code style issues. Don't introduce new bugs that your unit tests don't check. Oh yeah, by the way, your unit tests should still work. Integration tests should still work. Acceptance tests should still work. Right? I think we can agree there's a lot of cognitive load going on. Cognitive load, time, hits on morale even if things aren't worded as nicely as we'd like them to be. These are all opportunity costs. Costs incurred because we can only spend a scarce resource once. And as I went through this research, I got a little sad because this looks pretty grim. Why are we doing this? This reward side is pretty big, but the effort side's pretty big as well. And then I thought we should do better. And I think we can do better by applying a few patterns that not we as PHP developers, but the coding community as a whole have applied to code, namely async and non-blocking patterns. First of all, let's start off with async. Async to me is the fact that you have a PR and you discover a big issue, right? There's no like small issues, doesn't apply to that, but bigger issues. And you can pick that out of the PR. You can actually close the PR, launch that issue in a new context, wait for it to fall through. And when it falls through, you come back to the code. What kind of issues are we talking about? Well, we're a pretty precise bunch. There's lots of stuff that we look at when it comes to code reviews. But to look at this in a slightly structured manner, I would propose reward versus conflict. It gives you nice 4 little quadrants to reason about. And one thing's for sure, you want the human beings to look at this side, right? Because the low rewarding stuff is simply not worth it. And the nice stuff about the low rewarding stuff is that it's actually pretty easily tooled away. Well, things like hack really help you here. But for us simple souls that can't use hack just yet, PHP CS for your code style issues, PHP Stan for your static analysis issues. These really help you in this low rewarding side of this picture. And the low conflictual stuff, that's actually pretty factual. There's not a lot of discussions about a bug that exists. Functionality fails a little bit harder, but let's say you create your code with BDD practices. You have that functionality now in a Gherkin scenario. You run behead. You know that your functionality is exactly as you spec'd it. Low quality tests, a little bit harder. But also here, tooling helps. PHP infection, for example, creates mutations in your code and sees if your unit test will catch those mutations, so that you know that your quality of the code of the test is pretty good. All right, low rewarding stuff gone. Low conflictual stuff gone. Now we have a highly conflictual, highly rewarding, and highly subjective quadrant left. So let's see what we can do there. Well, first of all, that offloading. Like I said, it works for bigger issues. You come into a PR where this is the first PR where 2 services actually communicate with each other. How great would it be to not discuss how that would actually work, what the protocol is, all these things in a low bandwidth environment like a code review. Instead, lift it out of there. Instead, put it into a chapter meeting, into a development meeting, into a team meeting. I don't know what you have, but lift it into something higher bandwidth. Lift it into something where you can talk face to face and make quick decisions, interact way better. Right? That works for technical stuff like communication between services. But offloading also works for communication. Open that PR and you have a new teammate. Maybe sit with them and discussed, because that gives them so much more opportunity to ask questions, for you to explain the architecture, why you made specific choices and all that kind of stuff. That high bandwidth environment helps them immensely. Or introducing a new component to an architecture. How great would it be if you give a small presentation? Just a few slides where you go, this is the kind of stuff that we want to achieve here. This is the quality we're looking for. This is the kind of reviews we want from you. Right? Offload that. The tools that we talked about before. Let's make sure we can run those locally. Because that is another thing. If you open that PR and it's all still full with like code style issues and all that kind of stuff, you go, okay, fine, I'll come back to this later. And then maybe it takes a while and all that kind of stuff. You want to run all that stuff locally. What we do at Usabilla is we use makefiles in combination with Docker. Makefiles make sure that you run that stuff the same all the time. All this configuration is the same. All the arguments are the same. Everything. And Docker to make sure that you run that stuff inside the build server, inside your production staging and development environment exactly the same. Pairing is also a good way to get your code review before your code review. You, me. We all have those idiosyncrasies in our code, and that is perfectly fine. Everyone can like array map or for each over one another. It doesn't matter to me. But to get that stuff out before the code review is going to save you a lot of time, and pairing is a really good way to do that. And finally, communicate upfront. And this sounds very easy, but a code review is not the time for your infra team to go, you're using Couchbase? Yeah, we use Redis for key value stores. You really should hope that your interfaces are good enough to wipe away that difference, right? And that goes for technical stuff, but also goes for like code design. Create that UML. Create a UML in 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Discuss it with your senior people. Is this the kind of patterns we want to see or not want to see? Is this the right solution? Changing that UML takes you, 1 minute? 2. Changing it in the implementation in GitHub or wherever you store your code, doesn't matter. Wow, that is going to take you a lot more time, right? All right, those are a few of the async tricks I could think of. You can probably think of a bunch more. Let's move on to non-blocking. So non-blocking, to me, is the fact that you have the least amount of chance of having a blocking comment. Having a blocking to me is the fact that, look, I need you to fix this. I need you to fix this before I can even think of approving this, right? So Utopia, the thing that will always have these, will not have any blocking comments, but the least amount of chance, that is something to strive for. If you do hit one of those blocking comments, I'd like to introduce you to a technique that they use that Jeff Bezos introduced in Amazon management. Disagree and commit. You probably know what it's about. His stance is that at some point you are just sort of fantasizing about the future. Right? You have a value difference. This needs to be more flexible. No, this needs to be more flexible. No one's really right or wrong. But at that point, you might as well disagree and commit. Give the benefit maybe to the author. They have most context, probably. They have most knowledge. They looked into the code, everything. But the committing part, that is very important. You can never go back and say, ha, see, told you. I told you that that was the wrong decision. No, just disagree and commit. We saw before that having more reviewers are actually adding to your problem, right? So finding the right reviewers is key. One method to do that is to tag your specialists. For example, you've been pondering on this query for a while. It hits all the indexes. It probably does its work pretty efficiently, but you don't really know. And you have a database specialist in your organization. So how about when you open your own code review, you add a comment in there and go, hey, add database specialist. Can you please take a look at this? There's two things happening now. That database specialist will gladly look at your PR because they know exactly what they need to look at. It's going to be really efficient for them. And second of all, bystander effect doesn't apply anymore because there's no other coder that goes, Yeah, there's probably someone else is going to look at this part. I don't really know, right? We all go, oh yeah, approve, and no one has ever looked at it. Another tool to find the right reviewers is Git Guild. You give it 2 commits, and it will tell you the most lines added and subtracted. These are the people that give you good feedback. So Renato, Rodrigo, Ani, these would be good people for me to tag in this review. They have most of the context that applies here. All right, and then we get to the commenting. When we comment, it's just one blob, usually. GitHub, request changes, go. All right, I have 10 comments. Which one do you really need to change? How about communicating that intent? Reserving that first character for that log. This is a blocking comment to me. You need to solve this. Or this is really not an issue to me. Like, it's a suggestion. You cannot do it. But the other one, we'll solve this asynchronously. I don't really have the context now. You need to maybe give a presentation about this component. You need to, I don't know, get me up to speed afterwards. But this is not something that is per se blocking this thing. All right, so we have these async tricks. We have these non-blocking tricks. How do we apply this consistently? I think what we should strive for is a code review etiquette. Etiquette is behaving yourself just a little bit better than you're supposed to in a specific context. But that context, that is highly important, as usual. So let me run you through a few of these. First of all, is this code review inside your team or outside your team? Some teams, like some people really like it when other teams tweeze apart their PR. They are looking for the perfect code, the ultimate truth. They just want everything pristine. And that is absolutely fine. But when I look at other people's code, like at other teams' codes, I tend to take a step back. I tend to look at bigger issues. Are we now using event sourcing? Hey, this is a new type of storage that we use. Should we really do that? These are the code patterns we want to see. These are the anti-patterns that we don't want to see. Like bigger stuff. Blast radius is another one. Microservices, by design, have a pretty small blast radius, and that is awesome. Introducing a new code style rule that you want to experiment with there, probably not going to be a big issue. Try that same thing with a monolith. You're going to have hell to pay. And finally, robustness. So if you're working on this new financial system, by all means, go all out. Nail down every centimeter of that thing. If you're working on a code, I don't know, statistics tool that spits out some numbers every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and if it doesn't, it's fine, and it does it the next week. In that context, that PR needs to look very different to me. All right. We have these contexts. We have these tricks. What are we going to do? We're going to sit in a room. We're going to talk to each other with our team, with our chapter, with our whole department. I don't care. Go sit in a room every week, 2 weeks, month, 2 months. But just come together. Start doing code reviews. Do what you do to your code, but then to your review process. Get some code reviews that were highly conflictual, low conflictual, a lot of comments, not a lot of comments. Close pretty quickly, didn't close quickly at all. And then start looking in these contexts. What applies? What kind of tricks do we want to apply here? How could we have done better? What you're dabbling around here in is the complex quadrant of the Kenefick Framework. The Kenefick Framework is a sense-making device. It makes sense of your behavior, my behavior, in a very specific sort of environment. And creating a code review etiquette, that is pretty complex. We're using retrospective causality. Maria didn't have her morning coffee. Marco said something not very nice on that code review. Things exploded. It was conflict all over the place. Retrospective causality teaches us how that works. Marco didn't know. Marco really didn't know Maria didn't have her morning coffee. He would have been more gentle, trust me. And retrospective causality also teaches us how to handle that, right? How to create that emergent practice. We probe by looking at those code reviews, but we sense by sitting in that room with our team, with our development department, with whoever you can think of, and discussing amongst yourself, what context are we in? What tricks should we have applied? How could we have done better? And you respond by walking out that room and applying that new knowledge. This is now how we do code reviews. This is how we treat each other. This is good. This is bad. Final words for you. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Although I showed you that comments take time and like all this opportunity cuts. Yes, sure. That's important, but code reviews are important as well, right? But just don't stop commenting. Don't stop doing code reviews. But be mindful about the opportunity cost that you create in terms of time, in terms of effort, in terms of hits on morale, all these things. Think about some async and non-blocking tricks. You can think of a bunch more. You can drop a few. It's fine. And then start doing code review reviews. Start creating that code review etiquette. And that is, I think, the only way we can achieve truly async and non-blocking code reviews. Thanks very much.